The Signal, a UFO Encounter Thriller. Prologue, October 15th, 2023, 11:47 p.m. The first thing Marcus Chen noticed was the silence. He'd been hiking the Cascade Trail for 3 days, solo backpacking through the Olympic National Forest, and he'd grown accustomed to the sounds of the woods at night. Owls, rustling leaves, the distant rush of the creek, the natural symphony of a living ecosystem. But now, at 11:47 p.m. on a cold October night, the forest had gone completely silent. Every bird, every insect, every small creature that scurried through the underbrush, all of it stopped at once, as if someone had hit a mute button on the entire world. Marcus stood frozen on the trail, his headlamp cutting a narrow beam through the darkness, and felt his skin prickle with instinctive fear. Prey animals went silent when predators were near. But what kind of predator could silence an entire forest? Then he saw the light. Not his headlamp. Not moonlight filtering through the canopy. This light came from above, impossibly bright, impossibly white, descending through the trees like a slow-motion meteor that had forgotten how to fall. Marcus turned off his headlamp, stood in the sudden darkness, watched. The light descended in complete silence. No engine roar, no wind rush, no sound at all. It moved with deliberate purpose, navigating between the massive Douglas firs and western red cedars like it knew exactly where it was going, like it was looking for something. When it passed directly overhead, Marcus felt heat wash over him. Not burning heat, but a tingling warmth that made his skin crawl and his teeth ache. His watch stopped. His phone died. The zipper on his jacket began to hum with a frequency he could feel more than hear. The light continued past him, moving deeper into the forest, and then impact. Not a crash. Not an explosion. Just a sudden cessation of movement, accompanied by a pulse of light so bright Marcus had to shield his eyes. When he looked again, the forest ahead glowed with a pale blue luminescence that had no natural source. Something had landed. Something was in the forest. And Marcus Chen, against every survival instinct screaming at him to run, started walking toward it. Part 1. The Encounter, October 16th, 6:23 a.m. Sarah Mitchell's radio crackled to life at 6:23 a.m., waking her from restless sleep in the ranger station's bunkroom. "Sarah, you there?" Tom Breslin's voice, tense and urgent. Tom was another ranger, stationed 10 miles north. "You need to get out here. We've got a situation." Sarah grabbed the radio, still half asleep. "What kind of situation?" "I don't know how to describe it." "Just get to the Cascade Trail, mile marker 14. Bring your emergency kit. And Sarah, don't call it in yet. Not until you see it." That was unusual. Protocol was to report everything immediately. But Tom had 30 years with the Forest Service. If he said don't call it in, he had a reason. Sarah dressed quickly, grabbed her pack, and drove her truck as far as the fire road would take her. Then she hiked the remaining 2 miles to marker 14, where Tom was supposed to be waiting. She found him standing at the edge of a clearing that shouldn't exist. The trees had been pushed outward from a central point, creating a perfect circle maybe 100 feet in diameter. Not cut down, pushed. The trunks bent at impossible angles, their roots torn from the ground, but the trees themselves still alive, their branches pointing away from the center like iron filings arranged around a magnet. And in the center of the clearing, half buried in the earth, was something that definitely wasn't natural. It was roughly spherical, maybe 20 feet in diameter, made of a material that looked like polished obsidian but reflected light in ways that hurt to look at directly. No seams, no windows, no visible means of propulsion, just smooth, black, impossibly perfect surface that seemed to absorb the morning light. "What the hell is that?" Sarah whispered. "I was hoping you could tell me," Tom said. He looked exhausted, like he'd been here all night. "I got a call around midnight from a backpacker. Marcus Chen got his permit on file. He said he saw something land. I thought he was drunk or hallucinating, but I came out to check anyway and—" He gestured at the clearing. "This. Where's the backpacker now?" "Gone. I found his camp about half a mile from here. Tent still set up, gear still inside, but no Chen. His boots are by the fire pit. His phone's dead, completely fried, like someone ran it through a microwave. But there's no sign of struggle. No blood. He just walked away from his camp in his socks." Sarah approached the object carefully, every instinct telling her this was wrong, this was dangerous, this was not something she should be near. But she was a ranger. This was her forest. She needed to understand what was happening. Up close, the surface of the sphere wasn't quite as smooth as it had appeared from a distance. There were patterns etched into it, geometric shapes that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. Mathematical, but not human mathematics. The kind of patterns that suggested intelligence and purpose, but in a language her brain couldn't quite parse. "Have you touched it?" she asked Tom. "No. Have you lost your mind? I'm not touching that thing. We need to know what it is. We need to call this in. Get the Air Force, NASA, whoever handles this kind of thing. This is way above our pay grade." Sarah pulled off her glove, reached out slowly. The air around the sphere felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Her hand trembled as she brought it closer to the surface. "Sarah, don't." She touched it. The world went white. Part 2. The Message. Sarah woke up on the ground, Tom shaking her shoulder, shouting her name. "Wake up! Sarah! Can you hear me?" She blinked, disoriented. The sun had moved. How long had she been out? 15 minutes? An hour? "I'm okay," she managed, sitting up. Her head pounded. "What happened? You touched that thing and then you just collapsed. You've been unconscious for 20 minutes. I was about to carry you back to the truck." Tom helped her to her feet. "Please tell me you learned something worth almost dying for." "I saw." Sarah tried to remember. The memory was already fading, like trying to recall a dream. There were words. No, not words. Concepts. Ideas transmitted directly into my brain. It was showing me something. Showing you what? A warning. The memory crystallized. It's not dead. The sphere. It's not a craft. It's a container. And whatever's inside is starting to wake up. Wake up. You're saying there's something alive in there. Before Sarah could answer, the sphere pulsed. Not bright, just a dim glow from within, barely visible in the daylight, but accompanied by a sound, a low hum that resonated in Sarah's chest, made her teeth ache, reminded her of the way you could feel bass notes from a distant concert. The geometric patterns on the surface began to move, rotating, reconfiguring, and then, slowly, a section of the sphere's surface began to open. Not a door, not a hatch. The material simply folded in on itself, creating an opening that led into darkness. "We need to go," Tom said. "Right now. Back to the truck, call this in, let someone else handle it." But Sarah couldn't move. She was transfixed by the opening, by the darkness beyond, by the growing certainty that something was about to emerge. And then it did. It wasn't what Sarah expected. She'd been imagining something alien, something monstrous, something that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. But the figure that stepped out of the sphere looked almost human. Almost. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, and thin in a way that seemed structurally impossible, like someone had taken a human skeleton and stretched it. Its skin was gray, smooth, hairless. Its head was too large, eyes too big, fingers too long. But the proportions were close enough to human that Sarah's brain wanted to recognize it as human, even as every other sense screamed that it was not. The being looked at them. Its eyes, black, liquid, without pupils or whites, fixed on Sarah first, then Tom. And Sarah felt something in her head, a pressure, a presence, like someone was gently knocking on a door she didn't know existed. "Do not be afraid," a voice said. Not out loud. Inside her head. Clear as if someone was speaking directly into her mind. "I mean you no harm." "Get out of my head," Sarah said, backing away. "I cannot speak with my body. This is how my kind communicates. Please, I need your help. There is not much time. Help with what?" Tom asked. His voice shook, but he held his ground. "What are you? Where did you come from?" I am. The word in your language would be prisoner. My kind, we are called the Vespers. I was transported in this vessel, what you call a pod, from my home world. I have been traveling for what you would measure as 847 of your years. I was in stasis, but the pod malfunctioned. I woke too early, and now... The being swayed, stumbled. Sarah moved forward instinctively, caught it before it fell. Its skin was cold, impossibly cold, like touching ice. "I am dying," it said simply. The atmosphere here is toxic to me. I have perhaps one of your hours before my body fails completely. What do you need?" Sarah asked. "How can we help?" You cannot. My death is inevitable. But before I die, I must warn you. There are others. 4 more pods, scattered across this forest. They will wake soon, within days. And what is inside them? The being's thoughts became fragmented, harder to read. Images flashed through Sarah's mind, creatures that looked nothing like the Vesper, creatures that were all teeth and armor and malevolent purpose, creatures designed for one thing. Hunting, the Vesper confirmed. My people were at war. These creatures, we call them the Ravagers, were bioweapons created by our enemies. 4 pods containing Ravagers were sent to destroy a colony on the edge of our territory. But something went wrong. The pods were knocked off course. They've been drifting through space for centuries, and now they have arrived here. Here. On Earth. Yes. The pods are designed to seek out worlds with suitable atmospheres and biodiversity. Once the Ravagers wake, they will hunt. They will feed. They will reproduce. And within months, your world will be overrun. Sarah looked at Tom. He'd gone pale. How do we stop them? Sarah asked. You must find the pods before the Ravagers wake. There is a signal. You can track it with your technology, a specific frequency. But you must be quick. And you must destroy the pods completely. Fire will not work. Explosives will not work. You need... The Vesper's legs gave out. Sarah and Tom lowered it to the ground gently. Its breathing was labored, ragged. You need to understand how they were made, it said. The pods are grown, not built. Organic technology. The only way to kill them is to disrupt their cellular structure at the molecular level. I do not know if your species has such technology. Asterisk. We do, Tom said. Sort of. EMPs. Electromagnetic pulses. They disrupt electronics, but they also affect organic tissue if the pulse is strong enough. Asterisk. Yes. That would work. You must. Asterisk. The Vesper convulsed. Its thoughts became a chaotic mess of images and emotions. Fear, regret, loneliness. It had been alone in that pod for 847 years, traveling through the void, and now it was dying on an alien world, trying to save a species it had never met. My name, it managed. Asterisk. My name is Kael-Vora. Remember it. Someone should remember. Asterisk. We'll remember, Sarah said softly. Kael-Vora. We'll remember. The Vesper, Kael-Vora, shuddered once more, then went still. Its eyes remained open, staring at the forest canopy, seeing nothing. Sarah and Tom sat in silence for a long moment. Did that really just happen? Tom finally asked. I think so. I hope not. But I think so. So now what? Sarah looked at the dead Vesper, then at the sphere, the pod, still sitting in the center of the clearing. Now we find the other 4 pods, and we destroy them before whatever's inside wakes up and starts hunting. How? We're forest rangers, Sarah. We're not equipped to fight alien bioweapons. Then we get help. We call in the military, the government, whoever will listen. And if they don't listen... She stood up, pulled out her radio. Then we do it ourselves. Part 3. The Hunt. The military did not believe them. Sarah spent 3 hours on phone calls that went nowhere, being transferred from one agency to another. The Forest Service Regional Office told her to file a formal report. The local sheriff's department suggested she was dealing with a downed aircraft and should contact the FAA. The FAA told her to contact NORAD. NORAD told her to contact the Air Force. The Air Force told her they'd send someone to investigate within 48 to 72 hours. We don't have 72 hours, Sarah told the bored airman on the other end of the line. We have less than 12. Ma'am, I understand your concern, but we have protocols. Someone will be there as soon as... Sarah hung up. Tom was watching her from across the ranger station office. No luck. They think I'm crazy. Or they think it's a hoax. Or they just don't care because it's not their jurisdiction. She slumped in her chair. We're on our own. Not quite, Tom said. He'd been making calls too, to a very different list of contacts. I reached out to Dr. Rebecca Walsh. Remember her? Your friend from the university? Ex-colleague. We worked together back in the 90s before I became a ranger. She's a physicist specializing in electromagnetic phenomena and... He paused. And she's also spent the last 30 years investigating UFO sightings. You're joking. Nope. After what we saw that night on Mount Rainier, the lights, the craft, whatever they were, she became obsessed. The university thought she was wasting her time, but she kept at it. Published papers that got ignored, built equipment that no one believed she'd ever use. He showed Sarah his phone. She's 3 hours away. She can be here by 5 p.m. And she's bringing equipment that might actually help. What kind of equipment? The kind you build when you've spent 3 decades preparing for alien contact and everyone thinks you're insane. Sarah looked at Kael-Vora's body, still covered by the tarp in the clearing outside, at the backpacker, Marcus Chen, who was now sitting on the ranger station porch, staring at nothing, occasionally muttering about signals and frequencies. at the normal October morning that had become anything but normal. "Call her," Sarah said. "Tell her to bring everything." While they waited for Rebecca, Sarah and Tom decided they couldn't waste time. If Marcus could hear the signals from the other pods, they needed to use that ability while they had it. They found Marcus right where they'd left him, still listening to something no one else could perceive. His feet were bandaged now. Sarah had treated the cuts and torn skin from his barefoot trek through the forest, but he seemed barely aware of the pain. "Marcus," Sarah said gently, "can you help us? Can you lead us to the other pods?" His eyes focused on her slowly. "The signal. Yes, I can hear it. 4 voices singing. For sleeping things waiting to wake. 2 north, 1 east, 1 west. All within 10 miles. He stood up, swaying slightly. "We should go now. Before they wake. Before they start singing louder. We're waiting for help. Someone with equipment that can destroy the pods. No time for waiting. The frequency is increasing. The signal is getting stronger. By tonight." He looked at the sky, calculating something Sarah couldn't fathom. "By midnight. That's when they wake. That's when the stasis fails and they emerge." Sarah checked her watch. 2:47 p.m. Just over 9 hours. "Tom," she said, "get the emergency gear. Flashlights, rope, first aid, emergency blankets. And bring the flare gun. If we encounter one of these Ravagers, fire might be our only weapon. Sarah, we should wait for Rebecca. And if she gets delayed? If there's traffic, or her equipment doesn't work, or she breaks down? We can't sit here and hope for the best. We need to at least locate the pods. Get GPS coordinates. So when Rebecca arrives, we know exactly where to go." Tom didn't look happy, but he nodded. "All right. But we're not engaging anything. We find the pods, we mark them, we get out. Deal. Deal." They hiked north first, following Marcus, who followed the signal. He moved with eerie confidence, never hesitating at trail junctions, walking with the certainty of someone who knew exactly where they were going even though he'd never been here before. "How does it work?" Sarah asked as they walked. "The signal. What does it sound like?" "Not sound," Marcus said. "Pressure. Like someone pressing on the inside of my skull. And each pod has a different tone, I guess. The one that landed first, Kael-Vora's, that one was quiet, low, almost peaceful. But the others." He winced. "The others are angry, hungry. Even in sleep, they're dreaming of hunting. You can feel their emotions, their purpose. They're bioweapons. They were designed for one thing: hunt and kill and consume. That's all they are, all they can be. And the signal broadcasts that purpose constantly, calling to the others, coordinating." But Kael-Vora said they'd been traveling for 847 years. Why would they need to stay coordinated? "Because they're not just weapons," Marcus said. "They're soldiers. They have orders, protocols. When they land, they're supposed to establish a perimeter, clear threats, secure resources. Even after centuries of stasis, those imperatives remain. The signal keeps them synchronized, keeps them functioning as a unit." They'd been hiking for 45 minutes when Marcus suddenly stopped. "There, half a mile ahead, in the ravine." Sarah couldn't see a ravine. The forest ahead looked like every other part of the forest: dense Douglas fir, thick underbrush, the afternoon sun filtering through the canopy in scattered beams. But as they got closer, she saw what Marcus meant. The trees ahead were wrong. They weren't growing vertically anymore. They were bent, pushed outward from a central point, their trunks twisted at angles that defied nature. And in the center of that distortion, partially hidden by shadow and displaced earth, was the pod. It was smaller than Kael-Vora's, maybe 15 feet in diameter, and darker, its surface absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The geometric patterns were different too, more aggressive, with sharp angles instead of curves. "This is a Ravager pod," Marcus confirmed, "and it's already opening." He was right. The top of the sphere had begun to peel back, organic material folding in on itself like petals, creating an aperture that led into darkness. But there was nothing inside. The pod was empty. "We're too late," Tom said. "Whatever was in here already woke up." Sarah approached carefully, studying the ground around the pod. Deep gouges in the earth, claw marks on nearby trees, 3 parallel slashes that had carved through bark and into the wood beneath. And tracks. Large tracks, 5-toed, each toe ending in what looked like a hooked talon. "It came out maybe 2 hours ago," she said, reading the signs. "Moved west. Fast. It was running." "Hunting," Marcus corrected. "It emerged and immediately started hunting. That's what it's programmed to do." "Hunting what?" "There's nothing out here except deer and elk. For now, it'll settle for animals. But if it encounters humans—" Marcus looked at the claw marks on the trees. "Ravagers adapt. They learn. The first thing it killed teaches it about the prey in this environment. And humans? We're easier to catch than deer. A sound in the forest made them all freeze. Movement in the underbrush, maybe 100 yards away. Something large pushing through the vegetation. Could be an elk," Tom whispered. "Could be," Sarah agreed. But she didn't believe it. They moved quietly back the way they'd come, putting distance between themselves and whatever was making those sounds. Behind them, the noises continued, systematic, methodical, the sound of something searching. They didn't look back until they'd put half a mile between themselves and the empty pod. "We need to mark this location," Sarah said, pulling out her GPS, "get the coordinates. And we need to find the other 3 pods before they open too." "If they haven't already," Tom said. Marcus closed his eyes, listening to his internal signal. 2 still sleep. 1 is waking. We have maybe 4 hours for that one. Less if the signal from the first Ravager accelerates the process. "Can they communicate?" Sarah asked. "The Ravagers. Can they signal each other the way the pods do?" "I don't know. Kael-Vora didn't tell me that. But—" Marcus frowned. "The signal from the empty pod has changed. It's not broadcasting sleep anymore. It's broadcasting location, coordinates. Like it's telling the others, 'I'm here, I'm awake, I've found prey.'" "Then we move," Tom said. "Next pod. Now." They found the second pod at 4:58 p.m., east of their starting point, in a meadow that had become a perfect circle of dead grass. The vegetation for 50 feet in every direction had died, turned brown and brittle as if the pod's landing had drained all life from the soil. This pod was intact, unopened, but Sarah could see movement beneath its surface, something pressing against the interior, testing its containment. The geometric patterns were glowing faintly, pulsing in rhythm with whatever was inside. "It's waking up," she said. "And we're out of time," Tom added, checking his watch. "Rebecca should be here any minute, but we can't wait. We need to destroy this thing now." "With what?" "We don't have anything that can damage it." Tom pulled out his pistol. "This. Bullets won't work." Kael-Vora said the pods are organic technology. Shooting it will be like shooting a tree. You might damage it, but you won't kill it. Then what do we do? That's when Marcus spoke, his voice distant, dreamy. Fire. All organic things fear fire. The signal is screaming about it now. The first Ravager encountered flame somewhere, maybe a campfire, maybe a controlled burn, and the experience terrified it. That information is spreading through the signal. All of them know now. All of them fear it. We don't have anything that can produce that much fire, Sarah said. The flare gun maybe, but... The sound of an engine interrupted her. A vehicle approaching, moving fast along the fire road. They saw it emerge from the trees. A modified jeep that looked like it had survived multiple apocalypses and been rebuilt with whatever parts were available. Dr. Rebecca Walsh arrived like she'd been summoned by narrative necessity. She was in her 50s, with wild grey hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail, wearing cargo pants and a jacket covered in pockets. She jumped out of the jeep before it fully stopped, took one look at the pod in the meadow, and said, "Holy shit! Tom, you weren't kidding." Rebecca, meet Sarah. Sarah, Rebecca. Introductions over. Can you destroy that thing? Rebecca was already pulling equipment from the back of her jeep. Cases, cables, battery packs. Yes. Probably. Maybe. I have a portable EMP generator. It's experimental, never field-tested, and might electrocute all of us if I set it up wrong. But theoretically, if what you told me about organic technology is accurate, it should disrupt the pod's cellular structure. How long to set up? 10 minutes if everything goes perfectly. 15 if. The pod pulsed. The glow from its interior intensified, and the surface began to crack. "We don't have 15 minutes, Marcus said. "It's coming out. The signal just changed. It's awake. It's aware. It's..." The pod's surface split. Not peeling back like the first one had, but rupturing, tearing, as whatever was inside forced its way out ahead of schedule. "Everyone back!" Rebecca shouted, abandoning the equipment and running. They retreated to the tree line, watching as the pod tore itself apart from the inside. And from that violence, something emerged. It was worse than Sarah had imagined. The Ravager stood maybe 8 feet tall on 4 legs that ended in hooked talons. Its body was covered in overlapping plates of chitin-like armor, dark and glossy. It had no head in the traditional sense, just a vertical slit that opened to reveal rows of teeth like a lamprey's mouth. And it had too many eyes, arranged in clusters across its body, each one independently tracking different things in the environment. It saw them, all of them, simultaneously, and it screamed, not with sound, but with that same psychic pressure Sarah had felt from Kael-Vora, a blast of pure aggression and hunger that made her ears ring and her vision blur. Then it charged. "Run!" Tom shouted unnecessarily. They were already running. The Ravager was fast. Faster than anything that large should be. Sarah heard it crashing through the underbrush behind them, heard its claws tearing into the earth with each stride, heard that awful screaming in her head. Tom turned, fired his pistol. The bullets hit the Ravager but bounced off its armor. Might as well have been throwing pebbles. "The eyes!" Marcus shouted. "Shoot the eyes. That's the only vulnerability." Tom fired again. Missed. The Ravager was zigzagging, moving erratically, making itself a difficult target. They burst onto the fire road where Rebecca's jeep sat. Rebecca was in the driver's seat instantly, engine roaring to life. "Get in!" Sarah and Marcus dove into the back. Tom jumped in the passenger seat. "Drive. Just drive." Rebecca floored it. The jeep lurched forward, tires spitting gravel. The Ravager followed. It burst from the forest like a nightmare made flesh, all armor and teeth and impossible speed. It was gaining on them. "It's going to catch us," Sarah yelled. Rebecca was rummaging in the center console with one hand, steering with the other. She pulled out what looked like a road flare, handed it to Tom. "Light it and throw it." Tom didn't question. He lit the flare, leaned out the window, and threw it directly at the charging Ravager. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The moment the flare hit the ground between them and the creature, the Ravager skidded to a halt. Its psychic scream changed pitch, from aggression to fear. It backed away from the burning flare, then turned and fled back into the forest. Rebecca slowed the jeep. "Well, that worked better than expected." "It's terrified of fire," Marcus said. "Just like the signal showed. That's our weapon. That's how we kill them." Sarah was breathing hard, adrenaline making her hands shake. "We can't fight these things directly. They're too fast, too strong, too well armored. But we can destroy the pods before they wake up. That's our only chance." "Agreed," Rebecca said. "So let's not waste time. Tom, help me unload the EMP generator. We need to get back to that meadow and destroy that pod before the Ravager returns, and before it tells the others we're hunting them." "Wait," Sarah said. "Can they communicate?" Part 4. The Pods. They found the first pod at 5:23 p.m., 2 miles north of the original landing site, in a ravine that shouldn't have been there. Like the first clearing, the terrain had been altered by the pod's arrival. Trees were pushed outward, creating a natural amphitheater with the pod at its center. This one was smaller than Kael-Vora's, maybe 15 feet in diameter, and had already begun to open. The material at the top had peeled back like petals, revealing the interior. Empty. Whatever had been inside was gone. "We're too late," Sarah said. "It already woke up." Rebecca scanned the area with her equipment. No organic signatures. Whatever was in here isn't in the immediate vicinity. But look at these tracks. The ground around the pod was torn up, deep gouges in the earth, claw marks on nearby trees. Something large and powerful had emerged and immediately started hunting. "How do we find it?" Tom asked. Marcus, who'd been silent for the past hour, suddenly spoke. "We don't. We move to the next pod. We're in a race now. Destroy the sleeping ones before they wake. Deal with the hunting one later. What if it finds people? What if it attacks someone? Then they die," Marcus said flatly. "But if we waste time trying to track a creature we don't understand in terrain it's already learned, we'll lose the race. And then everyone dies." He was right, and Sarah hated that he was right. They set up Rebecca's EMP generator around the empty pod. Even if the organism was gone, destroying the pod itself might prevent it from calling back, from using it as a base. "Everyone get back 100 meters," Rebecca instructed. "This pulse is strong enough to stop your hearts if you're too close." They retreated, and Rebecca triggered the device. The air itself seemed to ripple. Every hair on Sarah's body stood up. Her watch stopped. Her phone went dead. And in the ravine, the pod writhed. Not like it was being destroyed, like it was in pain. The material bubbled and smoked, the geometric patterns scrambling, trying to reconfigure, failing. Within 30 seconds, the entire structure had collapsed into a puddle of organic sludge that smelled like burned plastic and rotting meat. "One down," Rebecca said. 3 to go. And one already hunting. They found the second pod at 6:58 p.m., east of their starting point, in a meadow that had become a perfect circle of dead grass. The pod was intact, unopened, but Sarah could see movement beneath its surface, something pressing against the interior, testing its containment. "It's waking up," she said. "Then we don't have time for careful setup," Rebecca said. "Tom, help me position the generator. Sarah, Marcus, watch the perimeter. If anything comes at us from the first pod's location, we need warning." They worked quickly, efficiently. By 7:15 p.m., the EMP was in position. Rebecca triggered it. The pod resisted longer than the first one. The pulse hit and the surface rippled, but the geometric patterns glowed brighter, fighting back, trying to shield whatever was inside. Sarah could hear something, not with her ears, but in her mind, the same way she'd heard Kael-Vora. A presence, angry and hungry and aware. Then the pod failed, collapsed, dissolved into smoking organic waste. Whatever had been inside died without ever waking fully. "Two down," Rebecca said. "Two to go." But the sun was setting, and in the growing darkness they heard sounds from the forest, movement in the underbrush, something large circling their position, staying just out of sight. The first Ravager had found them. Part 5. The Ravager. They made it to the third pod at 8:47 p.m., moving through the forest by flashlight, trying not to think about what was stalking them in the darkness. This pod was west of their starting point, in a section of old-growth forest where the trees were so massive that 3 people couldn't link hands around their trunks. The pod had landed among the roots of a particularly ancient Douglas fir, partially buried, camouflaged by moss and shadow. Marcus found it by sound. He claimed he could hear the signal it emitted, a frequency that drilled into his skull and wouldn't let go. "This one's different," he said. "The signal's weaker, like something's wrong with it." Rebecca scanned it. "The pod's damaged. See here? These cracks in the surface. Whatever's inside might already be dead. The stasis might have failed. Or it might be awake and hiding," Tom said. They set up the EMP generator carefully, watching the darkness beyond their flashlight beams. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling they were being observed. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound made her jump. "Ready," Rebecca said. "Everyone clear the area." They retreated. Rebecca triggered the pulse. The pod exploded. Not from the EMP. That hit a second later. But the pod itself detonated, organic material erupting outward in a spray of biomass that steamed in the cold night air. And from the center of the explosion, something emerged. Not a Ravager. Something else. Something smaller, about the size of a large dog, but wrong in every possible way. Too many legs. Too many eyes. A body that seemed to shift and reconfigure as Sarah watched, as if it couldn't decide on a final form. It looked at them with a dozen eyes, screamed with a mouth that split its body in half, and charged. Tom fired his pistol. He'd been carrying it the entire time, Sarah realized, just hadn't mentioned it. The bullets hit the creature but didn't stop it, didn't even slow it. Rebecca grabbed something from her pack, a flare gun, fired. The flare hit the creature center mass and stuck, burning with chemical fire. The thing shrieked, writhed, tried to remove the burning flare, but its own body kept shifting, trapping it. Within seconds, the creature was engulfed in flame. It collapsed, still burning, still trying to reconfigure itself, until it finally went still. "What the hell was that?" Tom asked. "Failed experiment," Marcus said. He'd barely reacted to the creature's appearance, still focused on whatever signal he was hearing. The pod was damaged. The organism inside couldn't complete its development. What came out was a mistake. Imagine if a human baby tried to grow without proper conditions. That's what we just saw. Imagine what the successful ones look like, Rebecca said quietly. They stood in silence, listening to the forest. The sounds of pursuit had stopped. Either the first Ravager had been frightened off by the gunshots and flare, or it was being more careful now, waiting for its moment. One more pod, Sarah said. Where? Marcus pointed deeper into the forest, toward the heart of the wilderness. 3 miles northwest, in a place no trails reach. We need to move now. It's 9:13 p.m. We have less than 3 hours. They almost didn't make it. The terrain got rougher, steeper, forcing them to slow down. Sarah's legs burned from climbing. Her lungs ached. But they pushed forward, following Marcus, who followed the signal only he could hear. At 10:47 p.m., they found the 4th pod. It was in a clearing that felt wrong the moment Sarah entered it. The air was too still. The temperature was too cold. And the pod itself was massive, easily 30 feet in diameter, twice the size of any they'd seen before. This is the primary pod, Marcus said. The leader. The Alpha Ravager. All the others were soldiers, workers. This one. He swallowed hard. This one is something else. Rebecca set up the EMP generator, but her hands were shaking. This is the last battery pack. 1 shot. If this doesn't work. It'll work, Tom said. And what about the one that's hunting us? Sarah asked. We've destroyed 3 pods and the failed organism. But the first Ravager is still out there. We have no way to track it, no way to kill it. One problem at a time, Rebecca said. She positioned the generator, made the final connections. Everyone back. This is going to be the strongest pulse yet. I'm using the entire battery at once. They retreated to the edge of the clearing. Rebecca took a deep breath, then triggered the device. The pulse was like a physical force, a wave of energy that made Sarah's bones vibrate. Every electronic device within 100 meters died instantly. Trees swayed as if hit by invisible wind. And the pod screamed. Not audibly, but Sarah felt it in her mind, a psychic shriek of rage and pain. The surface bubbled and smoked. The geometric patterns scrambled, fighting the pulse, trying to maintain cohesion. And from inside, Sarah heard something howling. Whatever was in there was awake, and it was trying to get out. The surface cracked. A massive claw, easily 3 feet long, covered in armored plates, punched through from the inside. Then another claw. The pod was failing, but whatever was inside was forcing its way out, fighting to escape before the pod completely collapsed. It's not working fast enough, Tom shouted. Rebecca ran forward, toward the generator. I can overload it. Push more power. But it'll destroy the device. Do it, Sarah yelled. Rebecca made adjustments. The generator's hum became a scream. The pulse intensified, and the pod finally failed. It collapsed inward, the entire structure folding in on itself, crushing whatever was inside. The psychic shrieking cut off abruptly. The massive claws stopped moving, still protruding from the organic waste that had been the pod seconds before. Silence settled over the clearing. Did we get it? Tom asked. I think so, Rebecca said. The EMP disrupted the pod's cellular structure completely. Whatever was inside couldn't survive that collapse. It's dead. 4 pods destroyed, Sarah said. 1 Ravager still hunting. But it's alone now. No reinforcements. No alpha to coordinate with. Just one organism in a wilderness it doesn't understand. It'll die eventually, Marcus said. Or we can hunt it. Now that we know what we're dealing with, we can plan, prepare, set a trap. Or we could leave it, Rebecca said. Let nature take its course. A single organism, no matter how dangerous, can't reproduce alone. It'll hunt for a while, maybe kill some wildlife, maybe even attack a hiker if someone's unlucky. But eventually, it'll die. And that'll be the end of it. Sarah looked at the destroyed pod, at the massive claws still visible in the organic waste, and thought about the first Ravager, somewhere in the darkness, hungry and angry and designed for killing. We can't just leave it, she said. It's our responsibility. We brought this to Earth by not destroying the first pod fast enough. We have to finish it. Agreed, Tom said. Marcus nodded. Rebecca sighed. Then we hunt. But not tonight. Tonight, we're exhausted. We've been hiking for hours. The Ravager has the advantage in darkness. We make camp, take watches, survive until morning. Then we track it and finish this. It was 11:23 p.m. They had 37 minutes until midnight, but it didn't matter anymore. The 4 sleeping pods were destroyed. The only threat now was the one that was already awake. They made camp in the clearing, building a fire large enough to provide both warmth and protection. Ravagers were bioweapons, designed for hunting in darkness. But they were still organic, still vulnerable to fire. Sarah took first watch, sitting by the fire, listening to the forest slowly come back to life. The silence had lifted. Birds were calling again. Insects resumed their symphony. The natural order was reasserting itself. But somewhere in that darkness, something unnatural was watching, waiting. The hunt wasn't over. Epilogue. The morning after. They found the Ravager at dawn. It had made a den in a cave system 2 miles east of their camp, dragging its kills inside. 3 deer, gutted and partially consumed. The Ravager itself was crouched at the back of the cave, injured. One of its legs was burned, probably from coming too close to their campfire during the night. And it was sick. Whatever Earth atmosphere Kael-Vora had said was toxic, the Ravager was experiencing it too, slowly poisoning itself with every breath. It looked at them with compound eyes that held intelligence and hate, then charged. Tom and Rebecca had prepared. They'd rigged a napalm trap, gasoline mixed with soap, containers positioned at the cave entrance. When the Ravager triggered the wire, the entire entrance erupted in flame. The creature burned. It fought, tried to escape, but the fire was too intense, too complete. Within minutes, it was over. Sarah stood at the cave entrance, watching the flames die down, and felt nothing but exhaustion. No triumph, no relief, just the weight of knowing what almost happened. What would have happened if Kael-Vora hadn't warned them? If Marcus hadn't followed the signal, if Rebecca hadn't spent 30 years preparing for something everyone told her was impossible. It's over, Tom said. Is it? Sarah asked. Kael-Vora said those pods had been traveling for 847 years. They were knocked off course. But what if there are more? What if this was just the first wave? Then we'll be ready, Rebecca said. We know what to look for now. We know how to fight them. And next time, she looked at the still smoking remains of the Ravager. Next time, we won't be surprised. They hiked back to the ranger station, arriving at 9:47 a.m. Sarah filed a report, a carefully edited version that mentioned a backpacker in distress, a successful rescue, some unusual animal activity. No mention of aliens or pods or bioweapons. The official story was that Marcus Chen had gotten lost, suffered from exposure-induced hallucinations, and was safely recovered. The unusual forest damage was attributed to a localized microburst. The military eventually sent someone to investigate the site of Kael-Vora's landing, found the destroyed pod, and classified everything immediately. Sarah never saw the official report, never knew what conclusions they reached. But she knew the truth. Somewhere in the forest, in a grave Sarah and Tom dug together, Kael-Vora's body rested. They'd marked it with a cairn of stones. No name, no explanation. Just a memorial to the being who'd traveled 847 years to warn them. Marcus Chen left the forest and never came back. The signal had stopped when the last pod was destroyed, but he said he could still hear echoes, still felt the frequency in his bones. He moved to the desert, as far from forests and darkness as he could get. Rebecca Walsh returned to her research, now with concrete evidence that she'd been right all along. The wait had been worth it. The preparation had saved them all. Tom Breslin retired 6 months later. Said he was too old for this job. Sarah suspected he was too haunted by what he'd seen. And Sarah stayed, kept working the trails, kept watching the sky, kept waiting. Because Rebecca was right. Next time, they'd be ready. If there was a next time. Sarah hoped there wouldn't be. But every night, when she patrolled the forest and looked up at the stars, she wondered, how many pods were out there, drifting through space, waiting to land? How many alien wars had sent their weapons into the void, not caring where they ended up? And how long until the next one arrived? The end. Author's note. This story draws on classic UFO encounter narratives while grounding them in modern ecological and scientific understanding. The Olympic National Forest is real and enormous. Over 1,400 square miles of wilderness where something could easily land unnoticed. If you encounter something strange in the wilderness, report it. Document it. Don't assume it's natural just because it's in nature. Stay safe. Stay alert. And remember, we're not alone in the universe. We've just been lucky so far.